This is Adam King from Aliens Don't Ring Doorbells, and you're listening to Madness to Creation.
Go ahead, say it.
Welcome to the Madness to Creation podcast, where self-care and music merge. This is Maddie. How are you? Here I have with me is the legendary Steve Kilbey. Steve, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
Awesome. And thank you so much for joining today. So how is life in Australia and everything like that today?
Well, I presume it's pretty good like it was yesterday. I just got up. I haven't been outside yet. It looks like a sunny winter's day because when it's summer in America, it's winter here. But in Sydney, winter isn't too bad. It's about, gets down to about 50 degrees. It gets really cold. It goes down to about 46 degrees. So it'll probably be between 50 degrees and 60 degrees today. I'm still going to go and have a swim. It looks pretty pleasant out there right now, although I haven't been out.
That sounds really good. So do you do a lot of swimming out where you're at?
I live close to the ocean, so I can swim every day. Talking about mental health, that's my mental health thing, is swimming in that pool every day. So it's like a sea pool. It's got fish and octopuses and birds in it. It's like full of life. It hasn't got chlorine, and they don't treat it, but they build a kind of pool around it. So it has cafe and it's got hot showers. That's the other thing I like. When I have a swim in cold water, I like to immediately have a hot shower. So it's really perfect for me, and it's something I try and do every day. Have a swim in that pool, no matter how cold it is, or if in summer it gets really crowded. But I still try and get down there and have a swim.
Oh, that sounds really good. So what else besides swimming makes you feel full of life and full of energy?
Playing music. Like when I have a really good gig, that's an incredible feeling. When you're having a really good gig and it's all just working out, you feel supercharged. And that's quite extraordinary, actually. Like I can feel really old and tired and worn out. I've noticed this. I turn up to a gig and I just feel like an old, tired guy. And I go, wow, I wonder how, and I am just an old, tired guy. I'm a guy in my 60s. I'm tired. I've got a headache, and, I didn't have my nap, and I'm angry with someone, and this didn't happen. And I wonder, how the hell am I going to go on stage and become anything? And yet I walk out there, I pick up my guitar, and the lights come on, and hopefully an audience goes, yeah. And then suddenly the transformation starts, and there's a little voice going, wow, all the aches and pains have disappeared, the headache's gone, the sort of shyness and, I just want to be left alone. Suddenly that's all gone, and you sort of walk out there and you're full of energy and beans. I guess that's why they all do it. I guess that's, why people who don't need to, like, I'm thinking especially of Bob Dylan here, but there are many others. People who don't need to tour keep on touring for that incredible hit of touring. Yoga makes me feel good. Walking makes me feel good. Being with nice people and having a nice meal. All sort of pretty regular things, But marijuana makes me feel good usually if I don't. Last night I had too much, and I was I had some new cookies I hadn't eaten, and I ate too much. And no, that didn't make me feel good. That made me like last night going, oh, it was like, whoa, I can't handle this much. But usually that makes me feel good. A cup of coffee. Once again, one cup of coffee is good. If you sit here and have 5 coffees, you're like, you've got to do everything in moderation. That's what I've learned. Sort of moderation of the things you like, not too much. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And given everything with the COVID-19 pandemic, With the album, The Hall of Counterfeits, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with the COVID situation in Australia, but are there going to be shows lined up, or have you done any live streams or anything like that?
Yeah, no. Things are opened up in Australia, and I've been doing loads of gigs. I'm doing loads of different gigs. The Hall of Counterfeits show, we did 3 last week, and we're doing 3 this week. They're just very small shows, like 50 to 100 people. If I, but I've been doing. I'm also a sort of a voice for hire, and I've been singing David Bowie with an orchestra at really big gigs.
Oh, wow.
Like big theaters, they're all opened up. So I've been going around Australia doing that with the orchestra. The church did a gig maybe a month or so ago now, like at a smallish festival. I'm doing acoustic gigs as well, where I go around and play the first 4 church albums, or the first 2 church albums in their entirety, acoustically. So there are lots of gigs in Australia. However, having said that, the one in Melbourne got postponed. I was supposed to be doing one in Melbourne last Saturday night, but because of a sudden surge in Melbourne in COVID, they went into lockdown. We've kind of treated it. Because we're an island. It's not because we're not necessarily because the people here are particularly clever. Because we're an island, we've had it down in single numbers the whole time. Suddenly, sometimes weeks go by in Australia and there's not one single COVID case. And then suddenly, mysteriously, there'll be an outbreak of, like, even if suddenly there were 5 new cases in Sydney, probably all the shows would get cancelled and everything would go into postponement. So it's been very confusing in Australia, because people ring you up and go, can you do this date here? And you go, yeah, lock it in. Okay. And then they ring up and go, oh, that one isn't happening now. We've got to move it because, they've decided. And all the different states are playing a game. They close their border to one state and then they open their border to another state. And if you're from here, you can't go there. And if you're from there, you can't go here. It's kind of gets complex.
I can only imagine.
But unlike America and England, we haven't had hundreds of thousands of people dying. We haven't had hundreds of thousands of cases. And right now, to tell you the really honest truth, right now I'm eligible for a shot. I haven't had the shot yet. My brother's had a shot. One of my daughters has had a shot. But I'm really not sure what I want to do about that. So it's not like Australia's had a really different response to everywhere else. And we've we've pretty much had it under control, and touring is back. The big festival, we were due to do a big festival a few months ago, one of the biggest ones in Australia. It was just going to be all Australian acts. And that got closed down because they had an outbreak in the area. It got at the last moment, it got closed down. That's been put back to October. It's like everybody who's anybody in Australia is doing that gig. So we haven't got anything from overseas, but Australian musicians are playing in spades.
Definitely, and it's like, it's kind of one of those things. You guys in Australia handle it really well, but as you mentioned, you guys are on islands, so it's definitely different from like United States, where like we're connected with countries and people are traveling from state to state and stuff like that. And kind of a few questions when you brought up your music. You said you mentioned playing acoustic gigs, playing with not with David Bowie, but singing the songs of David Bowie with an orchestra, and doing your shows. How do you prepare the mindset when you go on stage differently from acoustic and as opposed to like performing David Bowie songs in front of an orchestra?
The David Bowie ones I pretty much know them all now. I only do so there's like 4 singers and each of us does 6 or 7 songs. I sort of pretty much know my songs. However, whenever we do the David Bowie gigs, we always have to turn up and we do a run through with the band, and then we do a run through with the orchestra almost every time. So I prepare by having to be there and go through them and completely. The other night, we did a gig and I completely blanked on China Girl. And it was a big gig in a big theater with a big orchestra. And I'm going, I could forget this feeling. And suddenly, like, I forgot whether the next, I always get mixed up with I'll stumble into town just like a sacred cow. And sometimes I'm standing on stage and I start thinking about Iggy's version. Because that was the first version I heard. And you know, just sometimes you stand there and a random thought can enter your head, because I'm sort of a guy who has a lot of random thoughts. You follow that thought and then, boy, you snap back in and go, but hang on a minute, I'm standing here with a microphone. And then you go, oh, and you're firing blanks. You don't know what it is. Normally, you're hoping it keeps coming. If someone said to me, what's the third verse of Diamond Dogs, just go to it right now, I couldn't. It all has to sort of unravel sequentially. And I've got all these little, in my head, I've got little ideas so it leads to the next idea, like how does it all work? And sometimes when I drift off or drift away, or have a sort of a moment of a senior moment, whatever the fuck it is, I can't find where I am. And I'm like, and I'm standing there, and the girl who was the backing singer was going, and she was saying to me, go back to the top. And I was thinking, I thought she was meant, it must be a word about head. I'm thinking, what? This a bit. And then the moment passed, and the guy conducting the orchestra was looking over his shoulder like, what the fuck? And when it was all over, the promoter of the gig was not happy. And he was not happy, and he had a right not to be happy. But I don't know. And I wrote to him and said, I don't know why things like that happen. It just happens. I do know China Girl. I do. Obviously, I can sing. I know all the words. But every now and then, something happens. When that happens with my own song, who's going to tell me off? There's nobody can go, you forgot your words. I just make them up. Or I'll actually sing, oh, no, I've forgotten the words of this bit, so just bear with me. They're going to come back in a minute. And you still sing along. You can do that with your own songs. When you're doing David Bowie, or when you're doing anybody, if somebody hired me to sing whoever, I think it's more, you've got more of an obligation to get it right. And it's more shabby. When you forget your own words, that's understandable. When you forget the words to somebody else's song that you've been hired to sing, that's quite a shabby thing to do that I try and avoid. I try and avoid shabbiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us your few of your favorite memories performing live. Like, what sticks out to you, like, throughout your story career?
Okay. There are real moments that stand out. There are real moments that stand out. My first ever performance, when I was 6 and I was chosen to recite a poem or 2 poems, I remember turning up there with all these other kids. I remember the incredible nervousness. I can remember suddenly, for the first time in my life, I had to do 10 wee-wees. Suddenly, before I have to keep weeing. I have to keep having a pee, as you Americans say. And like, what the hell is going on? And my mother says, oh, that happens when you're nervous. So I'm running there and keep weeing. And then I had all this incredible nervousness and then when I got up on stage, I noticed all that nervousness sort of went, and it kind of turned into energy to do the poems. However, I came second last out of 50 kids. Can you imagine how bad I must have been in Australia in the 1950s to fucking have come second last? So, but nonetheless, I came second last. But I learned a lot about sort of showbiz that day. And I learned you always get nervous, and then when you get out there and it's time to do it, it sort of magically converts into energy. I remember my first gig I ever did playing the bass guitar. And I was 18 years old. And I can remember how excruciatingly nervous I was, and how hard I was playing the bass guitar. Like, I was like pushing the notes down, trying to push the strings back through the wood. I was so nervous, and I after that, I looked at other people on stage who seemed to be standing there doing things so easily, and I wondered, will that ever happen for me? Then I remember I was writing my own music, and I had my own bands, and nobody ever liked anything I did. And then I formed the church, and nobody really liked the church. And then one night, the church were doing a gig, and I noticed for the first time in my life, the audience were listening to my song, were watching me, were listening to the band.
Wow.
And it taken 10 years from when I first started at 16 to age 25 to be on stage with playing a song that I'd written, and people were listening and going, oh, and they weren't impatient. We were opening for another band, but they weren't impatient for that band. The people we had, somehow it had all coalesced, and there I was holding their attention. And that was an incredible moment. And then one final moment really sticks in my mouth. We were doing an American tour in about 2015, and I had noticed there were a lot of things standing in my way being a performer, and one of them was arrogance, and another one was inexperience, and another one was feeling I wasn't good enough. And then when I became a heroin addict, that stood in the way, and then the aftermath of that stood in the way. And then after all these years, in about 2014 or 15, I'm doing an American tour, and suddenly this something bigger and beyond myself was starting to animate me, like beyond, oh, I feel good, I'm going on stage now. And one night I was playing in Washington, D.C., and it seemed like something was actually aiding me to doing this. I don't know what it is. I don't want to say. I just think the universe was going. It was sort of the universe was going, we're going to help you do this. One night I was staying there playing in Washington, D.C. I think it was the new 930 Club. And the universe said, do you want a big blast? And I went, give me a big blast, give me a big blast. And bang, it came down, and it came right through me, and it went right out. And I saw the audience sort of go, oh. I saw the whole audience kind of went, oh, as whatever it was happened. It's never happened quite like, sorry about that. It's never happened quite like that before. I don't know why, but that never happened quite like that before. But I will always remember that the night the big chunk of energy sort of came down and then went through me, whatever the song was, and sort of hit the audience, and they all reeled and then went, wow. And it was sort of like, but it's hard to, what do you do? How do you figure that out? You suddenly corral all the audience throughout the gig and go, what happened? What happened? What happened? They all walked out, and the audiences are all just individuals. So they don't know I don't know if that happened to you in an audience, would you turn to the guy next to you and say, what just happened? Or would you just go, wow, I wonder what that was? Or maybe I imagine that they all sort of staggered. It just seemed like that to me. It seemed like, so I sort of remember those, if we're talking about amazing nights or sort of post points where everything changed, I remember them. Of course, I have bad counterpoints to those where things were absolutely awful, because I've done so many gigs over so many years.
Absolutely.
I've got the very, I've got standing on stage triumphant at rock festivals with a whole, 50,000 people going, oh, to being in a room with one guy coming up to me and saying, this is the worst fucking thing I've ever heard. And I said to him, I'll give you your money back. And he said, well, I'm leaving now. And I said, as I'm standing on stage, I said, my email's stevekilbey@gmail.com. And he said, I'll write to you. And the fucking guy wrote to me a week later and said, I'm the guy who wanted his money back. And I went, all right, what do I owe you? And he went, my ticket, my wife's ticket, my cab fare there. And I fucking PayPal'd him the money. But that's the gamut of where I sort of, like huge triumphs to miserable defeats. I've done them all, and they're all soup for the soul. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
It's if I was always successful, if
Mhm.
there were always 50,000 people going, I think I'd be a real rat bag. And if it was the other thing, I don't think I could keep going. If every gig I turned up to, there was nobody there except 2 or 3 people who are complaining and going, this is fucked. I don't think I could do that either. So I need these kind of extremes. It's like between the extreme of that and that, I sort of revolve around being held away from colliding with either end.
Yeah. Do you feel like that gives you sort of a balance when it comes to your arrangements and your songwriting?
No. The songwriting and stuff happens independently of
Okay.
success and failure. It's sort of like it's like, I mean, obviously when I'm writing a song, I might think, wow, wait till I hear this one live. But songwriting is that's a compartmentalized version of me that not thinking a lot about the outside world at that moment. I'm more sort of getting lost in the worlds of song. When I'm writing a song, I might get in a very strange space. I might get angry. I might get really strange when I'm writing a song and seem like I'm not listening to anything and people are talking to me. But if I'm following the trail of something that's very elusive, I'm on the trail of this elusive thought of suddenly the song has revealed itself to me and then ducked back into my mind. I've got to go in and chase it. The stuff that's happening around me is I can completely block out, or I try to.
Yeah, definitely. And like speaking of your songwriting, the Hall of Counterfeits, take us into the writing process of that album. It came out recently, and what are like a few of your songs you're just like, damn, I'm really proud I wrote this song.
There's 2 kinds of songs on this record. There's songs I wrote with the other members of the band, the band that I've dubbed the Winged Heels. So we had sessions where I would turn up, and there's the other players. We would usually create a percussion track first. Not always sure what we're going to do. Sometimes one of them would turn up with a little, like there's a song on the album that's sort of this little acoustic guitar thing going da 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 da. He had this little acoustic part, and everybody would sort of just play around that a bit. Other times we turn up and we go in, and there was the studio working had this big percussion collection, and we'd all grab things and start banging and shaking and build up a percussion track and then play over the top of that. When I wrote, and if you look at the album, half the albums are written like that. Half the songs on the album are written like that. And the other half of the songs are written with me and an acoustic guitar. And when I would write with the acoustic guitar, I would normally, this is the truth. I smoke a joint. I'm going to write a song. I don't write songs without smoking joints. I smoke a joint. I pick up my guitar, and I would just pretty much they would just fall out of the sky, like often with all the words and everything at all. And then I record them on my iPhone, or my girlfriend would record them on her iPhone. And I go, hey, film me singing this song, and she'd record all the chords, and I'd sort of get it down. That happens really quickly. Once again, I've sort of. Look, I don't know how to just describe it, but I'm being honest. And I don't want to. I just sort of in touch with something now that I never was in touch with. Something makes it so easy that I can just, whenever I need to, I can summon a song. They're not all the most brilliant, perfect songs you ever heard. I admit they're not. Not everyone is fucking Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, but I can write songs, and every now and then one of them is really brilliant. So that's really the two processes: just spontaneously writing with a 12-string guitar, or going in with other musicians and sort of working on things that maybe they've got a little melody, or maybe just recording sort of percussion together.
Absolutely. And what is kind of one thing you feel like you still want to accomplish as a songwriter and as a musician?
The one thing I still want to accomplish, I just want to go on. I want to astonish people. This double album, I think it's quite a preposterous piece of work. If nothing else than its length. It's like, my God, here's 23 new songs, pretty hot on the heels of the last album, and the next album actually is already recorded and ready to come. So I just want to astonish people that that there are 23 new songs and that they're all really different. I think there's a lot of energy in there. It's not sort of, I'm not going gently into that good night. I'm like, I've still got energy. I've still got ideas. I'm still having fun. I'm enthusiastic. There's happy songs, there's angry songs, there's sad songs, there's melancholy songs. I haven't sort of melted down into an old tub of splodge, sort of groaning through my twilight years. I'm still on top of it, and maybe, who knows, because my mother, who was as sharp as a penny, she got dementia at the end of her life, and it was sad to see. And I don't know if that's going to happen to me, but right now my thinking is very clear, and I'm feeling very privileged, because I have all this experience with music. Like, I mean, how many people in the world know more about music than me? Of course there's some, but there aren't many that, like, I've been playing professionally for 50 years. I'm an avid listener and devourer of magazines and books and bios and films, whatever it is about rock and roll, like my brand of rock and roll. I'm talking Beatles and Dylan and Stones and Bowie and all of that, all the way down to me and everybody that's into that. I'm an expert. I'm not an expert on much else. I'm not an expert on politics or fixing my car, or, even probably tying my shoelaces, because I wear boots. But when it comes to rock and roll and recording rock and roll and analyzing rock and roll and thinking about rock and roll, and the sheer volume of songs I've written and the sheer number of gigs I've done, and the hours in studios thinking about all this, and all my life leading up to that, when I was a kid, when just being obsessed with music, it's like, this is my specialty. So I'm happy that I have got all this experience that anybody my age would have, but I still have the energy and the love and the thrill to keep wanting to do it, to keep wanting to prove to myself and everybody else I've got what it takes, and I've got all this experience, and I'm starting to really, it's like it took this long for me to start coming up with these ideas. I have a lot more ideas now than when I was 30, because of all the things I've sort of witnessed and all the things I've seen. And every time sitting in a studio, like, if I added up all the time I've spent in a recording studio, it'd have to be years of my life standing in a room with a microphone going, "Do it again, Kilbey." It's all adding up. But at this point in time, before I lose my mind, it's all in my mind and I can use it all. Plus, I'm sort of, as I said, I'm on a roll with my muse, or the universe, or whatever it is, the goddess of creativity, whoever she is laying music on me as much as I want. Because of COVID, I sat round and played a lot of guitar. I didn't used to do that. I used to play a guitar if I wanted to write a song. Suddenly, because of COVID, nothing else much to do, I'm really playing a lot of guitar, and I've made a great leap forward on the guitar, which I never thought I would. I've never thought I would have. I thought I was always doomed to not be that good on a guitar, and it's always irked me to have to play it. As opposed to bass guitar, which is my natural instrument. But sitting around playing it, so I've actually got sort of more proficient, and it's more enjoyable for me to listen to my own acoustic guitar playing. So all of those things, I'm feeling kind of in a really good place right now, right today, as we speak. I feel like years and years of experience, but I haven't lost my energy, and my love for rock and roll remains undiminished. In fact, it's even more obsessive and crazy. My love for the, when I hear the songs I really love, or when I hear somebody or see somebody really execute excellence in rock and roll, you know, then I fall in love with it all over again.
Absolutely. And kind of two questions for you. Speaking of rock and roll, first question is, what do you feel is the state of today's rock and roll? And second question is, like, are there any like rock bands of today that you really gravitate towards too?
It seems like rock and roll has a problem, and that is, it seems like all the best rock and roll happened to me, all the best stuff happened in the 60s and the 70s. And still the kind of the records the Beatles made, and, you know, Dylan and the Stones, when those guys were at their peak, and then David Bowie during the 70s. I mean, a few other people too. I mean, it's television, of course, the Byrds, and, you know, and I love Genesis, and I love Yes, I love King Crimson, I love prog rock as well. But wherever it is, it all seemed to all happen a long time ago. I guess I am a classicist. I like all the stuff I like is either from that period or gravitates from that period, and sort of is something to do with that period. I don't really like. I don't really like sort of whatever rock and roll is today. I don't really understand it. Having said all of that, my youngest daughter played me some Billie Eilish, and I had to go, wow, it's not what I thought. I mean, it's hilarious if Billie Eilish needs me to say she's good, but in my opinion, as an old guy, she had a lot of talent, and the songs she's writing were beautiful songs, and her brother were executing them in an incredible manner. So, of course, at any one time, there has to be, in any one time, in any one field. I mean, in America in 2021, or in Italy in the 15th century, or wherever in China in the 1st century, or in the future in a country that doesn't even have a name now, there will always be musical geniuses and painting geniuses and film geniuses and poetical geniuses and mathematical geniuses. And there will always be those people having genius thoughts and making beautiful, wonderful music, like Lennon and McCartney and Bob Dylan, who you'd have to go looking at it, and Pete Townsend from the Who. You have to go, these people were sort of geniuses. They
Absolutely.
had, and I'm sure they're out there now. I don't know about them. I mean, only accidentally Billie Eilish, who I never would have heard, except my daughter said, have a listen, tell me what you think. I don't know who they are. I'm sure maybe you've heard them, maybe the latest, maybe Pitchfork or somebody like that knows who they are. I'm not sure who they are. I'm not sure even if I'm ready or want to have them, because I'm old now. I've got my groove that I plow. You know, I've got my furrow. I've got my field. I go up and down plowing it forever, and that is Beatles, Bowie, Stones, Dylan, you know, and all those classic great things that's sort of what I am, a classicist. I sort of, so, and I'm out of the loop, and you can't, but once upon a time, if you'd asked me that 50 years ago, I would have had a list of, oh, there's this and this and this and this. These guys have only got one flexi single in Mexico. And, you know, it's like, and the more obscure, the better. I knew them all. And I read all the reviews of every magazine I get my hands on, looking out, always on the lookout for something, the next big thing to come along. But nowadays, I just can't. I'm too busy. It would even be almost inconvenient for me to discover somebody that I loved that had 20 albums, because then I would have to sit around listening to those albums and admiring them, which might even make me envious. You see, it's all really complicated when you're a musician. If you suddenly encounter somebody who's really brilliant, for me, I react with envy and disappointment, like, oh my God. Like when I first heard Jeff Buckley singing, I'm like, oh my God, a guy can sing like that. Now what am I going to do? You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, I don't want to discover it. So it's a really funny thing that happens. But yeah, within my own genre, I'm sort of rabidly enthusiastic still.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of bands you might want to check out, White Stripes and Coldplay. I think you would like those bands. But anyways, you've been making music for 50 years. And what advice would you give to the Steve Kilbey from 50 years ago?
He wouldn't listen, for a start. Steve Kilbey from 50 years ago would not listen to anybody. And any advice, he would have made him angry. And I guess I would have said to him, I don't have any advice for you because you're not going to listen. I sort of came fully. The thing with me was I believed in myself. Like I had an unbelievably ridiculous, unfounded belief in myself. So no matter how many knockbacks I got and people going, you'll never make any music, you're no good, you're not right, you can't play, you can't sing, you whatever you think, like over and over and over and over, I had this attitude that I was right and the world was wrong. And when I sent my cassettes to every record company in the whole known Western world, every one of them, 150 companies wrote back and went, no, thank you, this is not suitable, we're not interested. I still went, they're all wrong. They're wrong.
Wow.
So it's sort of like a person like that is unadvisable. I had the hand of manifest destiny on me, and I knew it. I knew I would be able to make it as a musician one day. I just simply knew it. I knew that all the thoughts I had percolating in my head, and I understood that when I started making music on my own tape recorder and playing it to people and they didn't like it, I understood they just weren't ready for it. I also found I expected them to see through. And I realized that they don't, when you play people cassettes, or if you're a young musician and you're making music, make sure it's as sweet as you can get it. Don't expect people to listen through mistakes and bad notes and noises and things, which was my mistake. I thought, yeah, I've just rushed it and I haven't tuned up the guitar properly and I'm singing, it's not quite in time, but surely they'll hear the raw thing in there. It's the first thing. I guess that is my advice. Clean up when you play them stuff, make sure it's kind of it's an easy listen. You don't want to start off with something difficult. You know what I mean? You want to sort of have something that's easy for them to grasp onto, and make sure it's kind of tuneful and in time and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to circle back to the Halls of Counterfeits. Are you do you have any like singles that are like released to radio, or like do you have any music videos? I tried looking it up on YouTube and I didn't see anything.
No, there's no videos. The guy in the little record company is putting it out was sort of saying a song called Swinging on the Moon was the sort of focus track, but I don't know if he decided that, not me. And I'm all right with that. I don't think there isn't really a focus track. No track really is like any of the other tracks. I don't know if videos I think I don't know if a video would help this record. It's kind of like it's great to have a video, but as soon as you've got a video, it sort of starts pinning a meaning on a song. Unless it's a performance video, it's just someone singing it. But if you start having videos with actors running around and things happening, and suddenly that's sort of what the song becomes. And I just want these songs to remain ambiguous, and I don't want any meaning attached to them, and that's what worries me about having a music video. Plus, they're kind of expensive, and I paid for all of this myself. And it ended up costing quite a lot of money for me anyway. I sort of spent everything I made last year on making this record, and I just coming at another $1,000 for a video. I thought, oh no. But having said that, $1,000 for a video is pretty good, because once upon a time, videos used to cost $120,000.
Oh, absolutely. And like Michael Jackson would make a music video, and his would cost millions of dollars, but his production was just, pardon the pun, but it was off the wall, and
yeah,
and all that stuff. So what's next for Steve Kilbey, like in terms, whether it's a church or in the Winged Heels, anything like that?
Yeah.
What's coming up?
Well, the church are doing this festival that got cancelled. We're doing that in October. The church is slowly making an album. I'm going to continue with everything. Like I'm like a fisherman at a beach. I'm sitting there. I've got all these lines in the water. If a fish bites that line, that'll be the line I'm reeling in. If it's the only problem is when the fish start biting all the lines, you can't reel them all in at once. So I'm just gonna watch what happens. Keep on playing acoustic. Church trying to get to America, do the Cruel World Festival. That one with Morrissey and Echo and the Bunnymen and Blondie, and everybody's playing that one. We're doing that one. Awesome. And I imagine if we're doing that, there'll be a tour around it. Just waiting for the world to, if it ever will come back to normal and resume. Every year the church is doing like 100 gigs in America, waiting for that to come back. And in the meantime, just swimming along like a whale, sucking it all in. If I went to the swimming pool today and I meet a guy and he says, wow, I play the flute and I've got an idea for making an Elizabethan album. Are you interested? I'd probably go, yeah. And for the next month,
awesome.
For the next month, everyone I talk to will be going, Elizabethan music, man, that's where it's at. And so just looking for always looking for opportunities, looking for phrases, sitting on a bus, listening to people behind me talk, looking at every phrase, everything they're talking about, going, can I chop this up for a song? Like everything, looking for opportunities for art, thinking about old songs, listening to sounds. I walked along and I heard this air conditioning unit, and it sounded like a metallic sample of women's voices, and sort of going, oh, and then of course all this metallic sound in there, and I record that on my phone. I listen to it, and it's like, wow. Imagine in a song suddenly that comes in. This it's like you can't tell what it is. So I sort of always, everything I'm doing, I'm always and always have been, always looking for art in it. Always, everything that passes through my consciousness is a little computer going, is that any good? Nah. Is that any good? No. Oh, here's a little, like, something, just a little thing that you go, wow, I'll keep that. And when I need it, I'll have a look at these, like a mental notebook, and you go through and, oh yeah, that thing I saw that day at the swimming pool, where was, stuff like that. That's how I kind of, that's what I guess I'm doing, which can make it frustrating, I suppose, if you're trying to get me to be a grown-up person and look after myself. No, but I'm constantly distracted by everything that's out there. And that's how I was at school as well. And when the teacher was showing the kids how algebra worked, I was looking out the window going, wow, look at that cloud. And then I don't know any know any proper things. You know what I mean? Like I'm no good at filling in forms, or this other world is all I really know about, to the detriment of everything else.
And that's what makes you a true artist in every sense of the word, Steve. So, are you on like social media?
Yeah, I am, unfortunately.
Yeah,
it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing and a curse.
It sure is.
Once upon a time, you'd release records and then people would review it, and you do shows and people, the media would review it and there'd be a review. And nowadays everybody's got an opinion, and there are sort of like, there's all the stuff that goes on, all the tricks and the insults and the thrusting and parrying, and I get all caught up in it, and I get upset when they don't love my latest record, and I get upset when I'm being ignored, and I get upset when I'm being picked on, and I get upset when I upset other people. And it's sort of like it's a blessing, and I'm only talking in terms of music, social media. I'm not even talking about personal social media, where you're arguing with someone over what happened on 911, and people want to, depending on which side you fall in, say the fluoride debate. If you say, I think fluoride is good for you and helps protect your teeth, or if you say, I think fluoride is a filthy chemical that they're somehow giving us to fuck us up for some covert reason, depending on which side you fall on that debate, people will come around your house and murder you and piss on your grave. Like they're, and all of, was Kennedy murdered? 911, how did that happen? Is Donald Trump a good guy or a bad guy? Should you have a vaccination? Should you be a vegetarian? Should you do all lives matter, or do these lives matter? Whatever side of whatever debate's going on, should Dr. Seuss be censored because he's rude to Greek people? Like all of these things, whichever side on social media, people are ready to rip you apart. And I've fallen into that going, yeah. So same thing when it comes to my body of work, which now there are like 5 or 6 pages, and there's people on Instagram, people on their own pages, and I've got my own pages, and Church got official page, and all of them, people are weighing in with opinions. It's what a waste of time, me being caught up in all of that, and yet I can't leave it alone.
It's almost like a train wreck,
Yes.
You want to look away, but you can't, and
exactly. And everybody says to me, totally go, don't look at it anymore. When I go, I'm walking along in the real world, and it's a beautiful day, and the sea is twinkling, and there's seagulls calling out, and the breeze is blowing, and the trees are bending, and there's children and old people and people from all walks of life. I'm walking along thinking about something that happened in a virtual space where someone went, I don't like your new album, I wish you just stick to the old stuff. I'm letting something from an imaginary world upset me in a beautiful real world. That is just absolutely stupid. But it's stupid doing any stupid thing. It's stupid being an alcoholic. It's stupid being a heroin addict. It's stupid being a Facebook addict. But it's sort of like all the other things, you've got to kind of learn. I guess sooner or later, one day, the penny will finally drop, and I'll go, I'm just going to ignore all that, leave it all alone. Because it's very hard when there's pages and pages of every day, there's 100 new opinions about me and something that I've done, something I did in the past, something I just did last week, something I said, a photo of me. In this picture, I was fat and ugly. In this picture, I was thin and handsome. In those days, I was nice. Nowadays, I'm horrible. Then I knew what I was doing. Oh, I used to have this guy in my band, and I've had a falling out with him. I used to play this guitar. in an interview, I said this, I got a bad review in England. I got a good review in Germany. I played to a big crowd then. I played to a small crowd. It's all like, and it's like, and of course my mind's trying to, I'm always sort of doing my own market research all the time. That's what's really interesting me about it, is that I'm looking for patterns of what is it that they want? What do they like? What don't they like? But I'm a sort of a market researcher, and I'm emotionally involved, because when I find out they don't like my new stuff and they do like my old stuff, then that hurts. And then I'm going, oh, they don't like your new stuff as much as, and then suddenly there'll be a big burst of people going, oh, we do like your new stuff. And they're like, oh, they do like my new stuff. So I'm sort of trying to steer and I always have. I read all my reviews obsessively. I read all my reviews, all the bad ones, all the good ones, and I'm always trying to steer my course. I mean, I do take notice. If everybody will go, this is really rubbish, you shouldn't have done this, this is awful, I do go, okay, noted. If people go, aha, this is what you do best, this is an example, this is why this is so good, then I listen to that and I go, aha. I mean, not completely, but I'm taking it all in all the time. If any comment anybody has about my work, I don't dismiss any of it. I take it on and I note it, and I sort of put it on I put it somewhere to think about. That somebody thought this thing was good, or somebody thought that thing wasn't so good, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sort of, it's like an ongoing thing, trying to get a fix on who I am, where I should go, and everybody's opinion matters in some small way. They all of it goes into the melting pot, and then I move forward armed with all of that, trying to digest it. However, that was great when it was, your album would come out and there'd be 15 reviews, and you'd go, well, you know, a couple of really good ones, a couple of really bad ones, some mediocre ones, you know, take that from that what I will. Maybe I will go, they don't fucking understand. Maybe I will go, oh, I have to think, I'll take some of that on board. These days, when you do something, there's hundreds and hundreds of reviews, and then there's the people who don't review it. That hurts as well, when people who are huge fans of your work, suddenly you do something and they're not interested, they don't review, they don't comment on it. That's the kind of speaks volumes as well. And it's this new, so it's a new problem for me, who is so, and always been running on trying to take in what people say and using that to go forward. That's a problem for me, is social media, and that incredible, enormous palaver that goes with it, and the sort of the way a person can obsess about what people are saying about your music, you know.
Absolutely. And you brought up so much there. And it's kind of one of those things, like with social media, it's almost like, for me, I really have to discipline myself in terms of not constantly scrolling, because I tend to knee-jerk react about things. And like, do you find yourself, when you get those reviews and stuff like that, do you find yourself being acceptive of constructive feedback more easily, like in person, like face to face, whether it's in a Zoom call or on the phone?
What's the question again?
Oh, the question, like, do you find yourself to be more, I don't know if accepting is the right word, but more open to listening or something like that, when the constructive feedback is like from person to person? Like, let's say it's from somebody like a producer or like a fellow musician or something like that.
Sometimes I am. When I was, as I said before, when I was a young guy, I couldn't handle any criticism, constructive or otherwise. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, I like to think that I'm open enough when I see constructive criticism that I will recognize it and I will take it on board and kind of be open to it. It still really hurts. It's hard to imagine something that you're so caught up in as music, and then when someone doesn't like the music that you make, or has. I remember a friend of mine saw me playing in 1981, and it was a big gig, and there were loads of people there, and they were all. And then after the gig, the guy said to me, "You should have singing lessons." I was like, "What? Me, who just played to that room full of people who were screaming and clapping for me and got a record in the charts, and you dare tell me I should have singing lessons?" It was like, oh, it's like, but you know what? He was right. And he was right. And a few years later, some other guys made me go and have singing lessons. I think I benefited from that. But sometimes constructive criticism, when you're so caught up in it, like, it's so hard to describe your music career. It's like, like for me anyway, it's like being naked, it's like, and you can't bear anybody to say anything negative about it. Even if it's like, oh, he's a wonderful this and he's wonderful this and he's wonderful this, but at this thing he's no good. You're like, no, I want to be the best at everything there is. And it's sort of like it's like the energy that drives you, but it's also your sort of, it's the chink in your armor as well. It's where they can get at you because you sort of care so much about it.
Yeah. So do you find yourself focusing more on the negative then, like the one negative
thing
as opposed to the five positive things?
I do. And I read Madonna said, I play to 20,000 people and the whole audience is screaming and going nuts. And then I look at one person who's standing there yawning or frowning or shaking their head. And she said, I obsess about that. And I am the same. I could pick up the morning paper and there's 100 good reviews, and then the 101st review says, no, this is hopeless. And that's the one I'll be walking along going, he said I was hopeless. He said I was hopeless. And someone will go, what about all the good ones? I go, oh, they don't matter. The one that said I was bad is the one I'm going to think about. I don't know what that is. It's something I have to live with. But as I say it's also the thing that drives me, makes me get out of bed in the morning to stop the naysayers, to run around and stop all the naysaying however I can. And that's sort of working against that thing, and not getting too carried away with yourself. I think you can't believe all those good reviews. You don't want to believe them, and getting a good review is satisfying, but you don't want to put too much on it. You can't let it slow you down and go, okay, well, I got a good review there. I'm like, I got a good review, but now I want another one. I've got to make another record and get another good review. And that next review has got to be better than that good review. So you're trying to get more, but it's not for money. It isn't so you can earn money. I mean, of course you want money out of this and you want financial success. But it's just a sort of a thing of like, because you have to do it, because you want to achieve sort of musical perfection or something. You just want to keep hitting the spot over and over. I've hit the bullseye this many times. I want to keep hitting the bullseye for as long as I can. I want to sort of keep exercising this power to try and create music that people really love. And it just becomes a thing unto itself that just keeps driving me along now. And I imagine will until the day I stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's say, just a couple more questions for you. Let's say you're not an aspiring manager, but let's say you're a manager and you want to bring on a couple of aspiring musicians. What advice would you give them about like the music industry, how they should go about handling it and everything like that?
You got to have a thick skin. You got to have a thick skin. You've got to find people who you do respect, and you've got to listen to what they've got to say. and you've got to persevere. I think that's the thing. That's the thing people, and me included, when I was a young guy and I'd said to somebody, how do you get there? And the old guy had said, persevere. That was the last thing I wanted to hear. I would have wanted to hear, there's this, a magic spell, and you get the seed of this and you mix it up, and then suddenly I still want to hear something like that. But I mean, it's just the obvious things. You got to persevere and you got to give it everything. It's very hard. It's very hard for musicians, men and women, who are trying to be musicians and trying to make it, and they have jobs or marriages or children that come before the period where they make it. I mean, it's all right to have jobs and marriages and children once you've made it, but before that, you've kind of got to give it everything. You've got to be prepared to not have any money, and you got to be prepared to even lose money and put all the money you have, like I did. I worked other jobs so I could pay off all the musical equipment that I was trying to buy, the amplifiers and the mics and the PAs and all the recording equipment. You got to be prepared to put everything into it, and then you got to persevere and persevere and persevere. Paradoxically, you have to know when to stop. So if it doesn't work out, you need to get out and keep your sanity, and not forever be a bitter, twisted guy, sort of going, I didn't make it. Because I imagine I would have been a colossal pain in the ass if I hadn't had some success. And I'd been making music all these years going, oh, that could have been me. So yeah, it's sort of like, the rewards are great. It's like the lottery. The rewards are everything, but only so very few people ever will get there. The sort of odds are against you, and you have to persevere.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've had chart topping success, and you're also continuing to make music. And let's say music was not a thing. What would you be doing instead?
I can't do anything else. I'd probably by now be retired anyway, whatever my job had been. I would. I'd probably be on the pension. I don't know what I would have been, a clerk. I would have been, I had a job, for example, many years ago, over 50 years ago, I had a job where farmers wrote in and they got a rebate on sugar. So someone would write in and go, I used 50 bags of sugar this year doing this, and I would do a calculation, process their form, and then they would get so much money back for the sugar they use. For example, I'd probably do something like that. Even that I wasn't good at. And the boss said, I don't mind the fact that you don't do any work, but I resent the fact that you disturb everybody else. So I wasn't very good at even doing that kind of work. So I imagine I just would have been a clerk, clerking my hours away till I retired.
Well, there you go. And anything else you would like to add in regards to the Halls of Counterfeits, or like anything regarding the church?
No, I think we've got it all there.
Awesome. And Steve,
okay, mate.
Steve, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for taking time to interview with the Madness
Thanks, Maddie.
podcast.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.